Good morning, good evening, and good night, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Sly Report. And today we hitting y'all with the double edition for 11/23 and 11/24. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So we start off with chapter 1123, and in the beginning of this chapter, we start off showing the giant ship and the Sunny, and they're sailing away from Egghead. Egghead is behind them, the Marines are behind them, they're on their way. We cut over to the perspective of the Marines, and everybody's knocked out. I'm talking vice admirals and anybody below that, like Dolls KO, Pomsky, Hound. Anybody that was out there on the ships, done. They out. So, while this is happening, we see that somebody, and later on we find out that somebody is the fleet admiral, Sakazuki. So Sakazuki's calling. He's like, hey, what's going on? Somebody report. I need to know what's happening. But there's nobody to respond. We then see S-Snake. She's still in the bubble. She is still conscious. So, I'm taking this to mean that the Seraphim were unaffected by this massive blast of hockey. Either they were protected by the bubbles, or they just have that strong a willpower to where they just not affected. Or maybe it could be just S-Snake, because we do see she has a will of her own. And it could also be the fact that she just wants to go after Luffy. But that's neither here nor there. We're going to continue. We got to keep pushing forward. So, after we see this, S-Snake is not able to wake up any of the Marines. So we cut back over to the Giants. And the lookout for the Giants, he reports down to Dorian Bragi like, hey, all the Marines are out. Like, they're down for the count. So Dorian Bragi, they're like, hey, that's good. It's time to get out of here. And they're also commenting on how impressive it was that blast of hockey was able to take everybody out. Like, and depending on your translation, depending on where you read it at, they say, oh, wow, that was even stronger than red hair. But I felt no hostility from it. So, and then in other translations it says comparable. But overall, the statement here is that hockey blast was comparable to something that these two have felt from Shanks. So, that's that. But, as that's happening, we go over to Luffy and he's yelling back at the Iron Giant. He's telling him, thank you for all your help. You know, we go over there and we see Emmett the Iron Giant and he's fully powered down now. But Luffy still, he just smiling away, laughing. And you get the sense that he understood that this was something big for the Giant to do for them. So he's genuinely thankful for that. So, that's happening. But we can't get stuck here. We got to continue. We got to keep moving. We then get a shot of all the Giants and all the Straw Hats and everybody getting real excited to head over to Elbaf. You know what I'm saying? So, their Giants are excited. Usopp is especially excited. He's like crying tears of joy. Bonnie is over there. She's in her child form, her original form, her natural state. She's sleeping. She's sleeping on top of Kuma, basically. She's sleeping on her dad, and she just looks at peace. Like, there's a peaceful look on her face as she's sleeping there. We see Luffy. He's deflated from using Gear 5, so Nami's holding him. And then, after we see all the people there celebrating, they're in a good mood right now, we cut over to Sanji, who's the only somber one. And he is standing there with Vegapunk Stella, the main body's dead body. And he's just musing over the things that Vegapunk has said to him back on Egghead. So, as this happens, we cut over to 2 weeks prior to the present. And we're going to continue with that in 1 second. So we cut over 2 weeks prior to the present, where we have Stella, Vegapunk, Shaka, and Pythagoras, and they're going over some data. And they're saying, like, there's some anomalous aspects to this data, you know what I'm saying? So that leads them to discover that one of the Vegapunks is a traitor, based off the information that they found in this anomalous data. So, and there's a funny scene here where Stella Vegapunk, he automatically assumes that the traitor is Lilith, while Shaka, being the more level-headed of the gang I'm suppose, would be saying, or I would say would be a more accurate description of his role there in that group, would be like, well, honestly, it could be anyone that's not right here, right now. Out of us three who have ironclad alibis, anyone could be a suspect. So, they begin to make plans to investigate and make sure that, to put themselves into offline mode so that whoever the traitor is won't discover that they know that there's a traitor through Punk Records. So, they go into offline stealth mode. They start making these moves to try and find out who the traitor is. So, we then cut to a week after that. So 1 week has passed, and Pythagoras, he comes into where Shaka and Stella is at, and he's like, hey, I figured it out. York is the traitor. And this surprises both Stella and Shaka. And as they are shocked, Pythagoras continues that her memories that are being uploaded to Punk Records are fake. And that also, during this investigation, they found that the surveillance snails that they use around the lab have been tampered with. So, Stella's questioned why she would do this. You know what I'm saying? He's going over this in his mind, and he's like, well, why would York be the one to betray us? You know what I'm saying? And in that same breath, he apologizes to Lilith because he's like, well, I was so certain it was her, but apparently it's not. So I say, yeah, that's my bad. So, Shaka, he chimes in and he asks that someone had deployed one of the Mecha Sea Beasts without authorization. So now the pieces of the puzzle are coming together. Pythagoras, he's like, yeah, and also there was that jamming white transponder snail we found. Like, what's going on here? All the pieces are starting to come together. They're starting to figure it out. Mind you, this is 2 weeks, and this is all within a 2-week span. So within finding out what the traitor was 2 weeks ago, and where we're at right now, all of this planning and all of this investigation was done. So, they found out that the sea beasts have been tampered with, the campers have been tampered with, there was a white transponder snail that they found, and that York's memories that were being uploaded to Punk Records have been fake. So, finding all of this information, the Stella Vegapunk says that they can reconstruct the call as they proceed to do so. You know what I'm saying? They can reconstruct the call with the technology they have here. So they reconstruct the call. They hear York telling Gorosei that Vegapunk is studying the Void Century. And this is when Vegapunk realizes, oh, okay, so that's why Cypher Pole keeps coming around here. That's why things have been going the way they've been going. That's why they keep asking me about this. So, finding this information out, all of the pieces, right? All of the pieces of the puzzle to figure out what's going on have been put together almost. So we then cut to 1 day later, so 6 days before the present. And this is when Vegapunk, Shaka, and Pythagoras learn of the Lulucia incident. And this is when Vegapunk's mind puts all of the pieces together. So, Stella tells Pythagoras to monitor the sea levels and all transmissions. Stella tells Shaka that most likely the sea beast was used to deliver the piece of the mother flame to the government. Because Shaka's asked questions. He's like, well, what's up? So Stella deduces the story as he thinks it happens. He's like, okay, so York likely turned over this piece of the mother flame to show that the Gorosei and the government, she's useful. She's already betrayed us, so we know they're going to come kill us. Like, there's no running from this. You know what I'm saying? They get to that part later on in the chapter, but there's no running from this. Like, the only thing they can do now is try and mitigate the damage that's going to be done based off of what they know. So, you could tell this really bothers Vegapunk. You know what I'm saying? He's like, because he says this in translation I read. He says, "Only a fool lets their greed run amok, and I personified mine." So he's taking full responsibility for this because York is an aspect of himself, even though it is the aspect purely made from his greed. So, I mean, you could have a little bit of plausible deniability there, but obviously Vegapunk is not going to let that happen. He's like, nah, this is my responsibility because she came from me. So, that's happening. So now, Stella knows there's no point in confronting York because the government, they have basically all they need to make a move on him and, the other Vegapunks. He also says, and this is where we get to there's no use to run either, because at this point the government has already issued secret orders to all the Marine bases, and everybody is going to know in the government that Vegapunk is a traitor. So there's no point running, there's no point confronting York, but what we can do is come up with a plan to make sure that if I die, my death won't be in vain. So that's what they begin to do. Vegapunk says that they have something that Ohara did not. They have the equipment and the means to amplify their voices. So Vegapunk, Shaka, and Pythagoras begin to set up the plan that we see play out during the Egghead arc. So, all while hiding this from the other Vegapunks, by the way. They're hiding, especially from York, but because, they're trying to make sure that they can get this plan done, and that if the worst should come, they will be prepared for it. Alright, so now we cut to 2 days before the present. And they record the message then, and then they hide it in the Iron Giant, the special transponder snail into the Iron Giant image. And after doing this, they proceed to erase the last 2 weeks from their memories. And then after doing so, Stella finds a note that he left for himself, explaining that the government would come, and that they know that he's been researching the Void Century, and that they have a plan, and that there's a traitor, but there is a plan in place, and that when the time comes, he needs to trust himself and die. So, dying was always part of the plan for Vegapunk. And Shaka, Pythagoras, and Stella, Vegapunk, knew that. They knew at least that dying was in the plan for them, or at least the Stella body. So, we then cut over to Vegapunk's reaction when everything starts to go down. So first, they announce Emperor Straw Hat Luffy and Jewelry Bonnie are on the island, and Vegapunk's like, what? Then they announce, oh yeah, the Marines are coming and they have a whole bunch of ships and they blockaded the island. What? Oh yeah, they have Admiral Kizaru and Saint Saturn with them. What? So Vegapunk, he knew the government was coming. He didn't know to the degree of which things would go down, but he knew something was going to happen. But even knowing that something was going to happen, everything happening at the same time, damn near on the same day, really just surprised the hell out of him. So then, after we see the reactions from that, we cut over to Vegapunk when he left with Sanji and them to go and save Bonnie. And as they are doing this, this is when he explains to Sanji, hey, I kind of feel like I need to stay behind, and you guys need to let me die. I can't be sure, but I know there's a plan in place, and I feel like if I have to die for that to happen. So, he says this to Sanji, and Sanji, he tries to, argue back a little bit, because he's like, I don't understand what you're talking about. But Vegapunk's not trying to hear that. His mind is set at this point. So, the last thing he says to Sanji is, hey man, it's about the One Piece. I want to tell you something. Sanji's like, well, yeah, what is it? Vegapunk says to Sanji, I hope your crew finds it. So, with all of the stuff that we just heard from Vegapunk during that message, with everything that he said that he knew for certain, right? And everything that he was making conjectures on, he still believes now, right before his death, more than ever, that Luffy and the Straw Hats are the ones that need to get the One Piece. So, I will say this for probably the last time. W Man's Vegapunk. So, after we get all of that information, all of that flashback stuff, that good stuff to recontextualize the entire arc of Egghead, we cut back to the Giants, and they are lifting up Usopp and the deflated Luffy, and they are celebrating. And Usopp is super excited. He's like, I get to go to the land of my dreams. And the Giants are excited, like, yeah, let's go to Elbaf, let's go back home, basically. And then Luffy's just there, all deflated and stuff, and he's just like, hey, wait, can we do this later? Like, not right now. Can we do this in a couple of minutes or so? Like, I know y'all see my body. So, I just think that's funny, because, you always gotta, not always, but most of the time you ended on a funny note, especially with all the seriousness that has happened throughout this arc, the heaviness of the Kuma backstory and all that. But we're not entirely done with the End of Egghead yet. We got one more chapter to go, and that's 1124, and we're going to come back and get right into that. So, we're back with chapter 1124, and we start off 1124 in the sky, in the headquarters of the World Economic Journal, with Big News Morgan. And this man is excited. He's like, and I'm gonna quote him, and I'm gonna give y'all a couple more quotes this chapter, but we're gonna start here. He says, come on, let's rock. We're sitting on some juicy scoops. Stoke their fears. Paint a picture of the bleakest future possible. Use their desperation to push more World Economic Journal papers. To which Vivi, who is also there, responds and says, oh, you're gross. Like, even Vegapunk gave his news with a show of optimism, with a sparkle of hope. This starts an argument between the two, clearly. Because he's like, hey yo, news is news by any means. I control the narrative. I control this. I make the stories happen. Vivi's like, hey man, just tell the truth. And he's like, the truth? Alright. So, that is happening. As this is happening, Morgan's, he begins to threaten Vivi, talking about some, don't forget, I can expose you. I can let them know. Like, where y'all at? You know? That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Vivi, ignoring this threat, is like, hey man, you're a liar. Like, no person with a brain in their head would believe these lies you're telling right now. So she's standing her ground. I like that. Vivi still standing her ground. She's a strong woman. She's a strong, independent, Alabastan woman. And she gonna tell a motherfucker what she think. So, as this is happening, Wapple tries to calm Vivi down, mostly to save his own ass, because if she's exposed, he's exposed. So Wapple's like, hey man, just, calm down, you know what I'm saying? Like, this ain't the time to be angering this guy, But Morgan's, he goes back to what he was talking about previously before, and he's like, we can't pass this up. Even the truth is captivating now. The whole world's sinking. I'm the top dog up in the sky anyway. So this upcoming era is perfect for me. Then he gets a side eye. He gives a side eye to Vivian. He's like, I hope you won't come to regret talking back to me, princess. So, another threat. But we know how Vivi responds to those. So, it ain't even a thing for real. But, Vivi's like, as if, even if the world is ending, I'm not going to grovel just to save my own neck. So, you know what I'm saying? Vivi's standing on it. She say, I'm standing on it. This is business, and I'm standing on it. So, she's standing on business about the Straw Hats. And, they friends. So, of course, she's going to be like, hey, man, don't, cut it out. So, Morgus then turns his attention back to the news saying, look at all these stories. We got Blackbeard, Emperor Blackbeard versus Trafalgar Law. We got Emperor Red Hair Shanks taking on Eustace Captain Kidd. And then we got Emperor Straw Hat ruthlessly killing Dr. Vegapunk. And this is when Vivi gets mad and she immediately calls him a liar. So, they gonna be going back and forth about this. But we cannot stay in the sky with the bird brain, the princess, and the fool. We must continue. So continue is what we shall do. We cut back over to Egghead now, where Sakazuki is still on the line trying to get somebody, anybody, to pick up and give him some kind of answers. So, as he's talking, he's like, hey, somebody, report, somebody, anybody. We see Kizaru. And Kizaru comes and he answers the phone and he's like, everybody's laid out, man. I don't know what you want me to do. I don't know what you want from these people right now, or from me even, but everybody's laid out. That's the situation. Sakazuki, he's immediately asking questions. He's like, oh, what's going on with St. Saturn? Is the power station still intact? Did any of the targets escape? And Kizaru initially responds by telling him, Ayo, honestly, one of these youngsters could give you a report when they wake up. But as far as me telling you, boy, it's 6 o'clock and I'm clocking out. It's basically what Kizaru's saying. So now we're going to get into what I like to call Kizaru's emotional breakdown. So, Sakazuki, in his infinite wisdom, says to Kizaru, hey, you better not be slacking off again, man. And Kizaru, he takes a moment. He lets that ruminate in his mind for a second. And he's like, hey, Sakazuki. And this is a quote. I'm curious. Have you ever killed your best friend? And as he asked him this question, we see all of, well, not all, but major memories that Kizaru has with Vegapunk. We see when Kizaru was sent to arrest him, and Vegapunk's first question out of Vegapunk's mouth is like, "Hey, how much y'all gonna pay me? Like, I know y'all really want my scientific expertise and all of that, so how much y'all gonna pay me?" And this makes Kizaru Borsellino laugh, and then we cut forward to Vegapunk telling Kizaru about this is gonna be the island of the future. It's gonna be 500 years ahead. Like, this is my dream. Can you help me build it? And we see Kizaru helping to build Egghead Island. We just flashing through like little important parts of this friendship to let you know, like, Kizaru really thought this man was his best friend. Like, he really thought of Vegapunk as his best friend. So, after we see these memories, Kizaru continues, and at this point, he's on the edge. And this is where he loses it. Right after this sentence, he says, "You think I'm slacking off, Sakazuki?" It's a question. It's a rhetorical question, because there was no answer needed for that question. Because right after that, Kizaru snaps. He is yelling. There is tears and snot on his face. And he is like, "Well, if you got time to waste doubting me, come and see for yourself, you damn ingrate." And in some translations, I've seen that he calls him a brat. I like that one better. But in the one I read, he called him ingrate. But this actually shocks Sakazuki. He takes a second and he's like, he actually apologizes. He's like, "That was my bad, brother. That was my bad." Calling Kizaru brother. Now, this could mean a multiple of things. I doubt it means they're biological brothers. Could mean brothers in arms. It could mean brothers in a different sense. It could mean anything. But he does apologize and say, "My bad, brother," to Kizaru. To which Kizaru responds with, "All right, just watch your mouth." So I like this. I like seeing that even though Kizaru was dedicated to doing his job and he stuck to doing his job, it was not easy for him to do. Like, it really did, like, emotionally mess with him to have to kill Vegapunk, to have to do that to Bonnie and Takuma. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are people he really spent time with, and I'm sure he had an attachment for. And to Sentomaru as well. Oh yeah, speaking of Sentomaru, I forgot to mention this earlier, but we do see him escape from Egghead Island on a boat by himself, just a little tiny boat, and he's just rowing and crying. Because, I mean, for all intents and purposes, Vegapunk raised this man. Like, he took him in from a young boy, and he raised this man. And then on top of that, you had to fight your mentor in Kizaru, and like, to protect the man who raised you. Like, it's just, these are the two adult figures in Sentomaru's life. You feel me? And they're on opposite sides. He picked his side, and now it's just, this is what happened from it. This is the devastation that came with the choices that everybody involved made. So that's happening. But we cannot get stuck here. We cannot pause. We must continue. So continue we shall. We then cut back over to the Sunny and the giant ship. And we start out on the Sunny where Frankie and Jinbei and Zoro are. And Frankie and Jinbei are talking. And Frankie is talking to Jinbei and he's saying it's really quieted down. And it's kind of odd to stop a party after just one drink. To which Jinbei agrees and he's like, yeah, you know, it is kind of strange. I've never seen Luffy this dejected. But I do understand because we weren't able to accomplish our main goal. So Frankie responds to this and he's like, well, we did just have to face the 5 elders, an admiral, CP0, the Seraphim, and an armada of warships. Getting through that was a miracle in itself. And honestly, I'm surprised we made it out. And Jinbei agrees with this, and then Zoro off in the corner drinking his drink. And he chimes in, he's saying it's pathetic. He's an emperor now. An old man dying shouldn't affect him this badly. And Frankie responds with, well, that's kind of harsh. But I kind of feel where Zoro's coming from, because taking every loss to heart like this can be a sign of weakness, you feel me? It's like, oh yeah, if I just take out somebody that's close to Straw Hat, he's gonna fold. But also, in this circumstance, it is kind of unique because Luffy himself directly gave his word to do something to somebody, and he wasn't able to, in his mind, fulfill his promise. So, and Luffy, if he can't do this one thing that he said he's gonna do, then he's gonna start, he's like, well, how could I be king of the pirates if I can't even save da-da-da? And we see him later on, and he's even speaking like, he's like, I'm supposed to be an emperor, but I couldn't even save Apple Gramps, you know what I'm saying? So, like, I get where Zoro's coming from, but I also get why Luffy feels the way he feels. So, there's that dynamic. But we then cut over to Lilith, who is just awoken on the giant ship. And she is surrounded by Usopp, Chopper, Nami, and Sanji. And they're all relieved, and they're like, oh, you're okay, we're glad you're awake, And Lilith sits up, and she grabs her headpiece, and she's like, okay. Sound kind of like she hears somebody saying something to her. And, it's kind of suspicious, whatever. But the others, they're talking to her. They're trying to make sure she's okay. And Nami's like, yeah, I don't know if you're a little disorientated, but Atlas did hit you kind of hard. And Lilith's like, no, I'm all right. And, I'm aware of what happened. Because they're telling her, like, yeah, we weren't able to save the other Vegapunks. You're the only one that we could rescue for real. And Lilith's like, yes, okay, I kind of know about that already. I've been told that, she says. I've heard that already, she says. And this confuses Sanji, and Sanji's like, heard that from who? But he gets ignored, and Lilith just, suddenly begins to start crying. And then, while she's crying, we see Usopp in the background, and he's like, so yeah, what part of you exactly is supposed to be evil? Because I don't know. So she's crying, then she stops crying, and immediately she's like, I'm actually kind of hungry. And this is surprising to everybody, but, they're just like, and as she says this, she says, I'm actually kind of hungry. As she says this, she thinks to herself, like, it must be because I'm no longer connected to York. So, that's a hint. To me, that's a hint at what's going on, you know what I'm saying? That's a hint at later on in the chapter when she reveals what she reveals to Luffy and the rest of them. Like, that's a major hint, besides those, hearing somebody talk to her, that, okay, yeah, they're good. Or they live on within. So, Brook is like, all right, cool, yeah, you hungry? I'll show you where the food at. The Giants left us some fruit. So, Brook shows Lilith where the food at, and that is when we see Luffy. And Luffy is looking sad on top of this giant food, and we hear him talking. He's like, damn it all, we promised to save Apple Gramps. And he's all sad and upset, but he's still eating. Because he's back to normal Luffy form. So Chopper explains to Bonnie that he's down, and that he's so down that he's only eaten 5 bunches of grapes. And these are giant grapes. Like, he's eating giant grapes, and he's only eating 5 bunches because he's down. And this shocks nobody except Lilith. And Lilith's like, well, that's enough, ain't it? But she clocks that everybody is sad, and she's like, oh, you feel bad because you weren't able to keep your promise, right? And she's like, well, don't worry about it. And they're like, what? And she's like, well, yeah, I'm sure you're sad that everybody died, and I was too for a little bit, but that's just a matter of perspective. Basically what I'm saying is, and she says to simplify it, everybody's still alive. This shocks everyone in the room, and she says, yeah, don't worry about it. You kept your promise to me, Luffy. So this instantly changes Luffy's attitude. Luffy is now, he's happy again. He's happy Luffy. He's cheered up. He's like, hey, well, all right then. He goes to the giant. He's like, hey, man, let's get this party started back up. You know what I'm saying? So they're starting that party. They're starting to cheers and enjoy each other's company. And this is when Dory and Broggy were like, hey, you heard Vegapunk's message, right? He's like, whoever's going to get the One Piece, that's going to be kind of important. So, Straw Hat, what's your goal? And Luffy's like, man, my goal's the same as always been. I'm going to be king of the pirates, and I don't care if I got to go through y'all to do it. That's me. So they're all having a good time. The Giants are cheering that. Robin's sitting there happy, smiling. She's like, oh man, if I get to Elbaf, I might get to see Saul. She's talking to Chopper. Chopper's like really happy for her because he likes seeing Robin happy. We all like to see Robin happy. And so I hope that reunion is quick, fast, and in a hurry once we land on Elbaf. That would be wonderful. So that's happening. Everybody's partying, having a good time. And then we cut to the shores of Elbaf, where we see a silhouetted figure sitting there. And he's like, well, come on then. And he's sitting there, he's waiting for them to arrive. So I know we don't know who this is, and there have been a number of guesses. Right now, I'm in the camp of it's either Shiki, the Golden Lion, or it could be Scopper Gabon. It could be somebody else. I don't think it's Saul, just based off of the silhouette. And I believe if it was Saul, maybe, possibly, we would have got more than a silhouette. But I don't think it's Saul. It could be somebody else. It could be another figure from the Rock's Pirate times. It could be just someone who's important to the land of Elbaf, somebody who's important on Elbaf. It could be anybody, but we know that they're waiting, and he's telling us to come on. So we coming. And that is where we end chapter 1124. And that, my friends, is the end of the Egghead arc. I would like to thank you guys for liking, commenting, subscribing, watching the videos. Don't forget to do all that stuff for this one. Subscribe, share, ring the notification bell so you know when stuff is dropping. I am trying to be better about making announcements on here, like for when I'm gonna miss a week. Like last week, I do drop that kind of stuff on my Twitter or X, and also I drop like little preview stuff and other things on TikTok. So that's also gonna be in the link, the description down below. So if you want to go check those out, go check those out. But thanks for joining us here on the Sly Report. We will see you next time, and don't forget, we got more stuff coming on the channel. We got the Crew Adventures Season 2 coming up. We got all that. Don't forget to go check out the TikTok. That's really important if you want to be like kept up to speed with what's going on, because that's really where I'll be dropping like most of the announcement type stuff. I'll drop like a little teaser or a little trailer for this or that. But yeah, thanks again, guys. This is Sly Report, and we'll see you next time.